Hey guys, Creator Mom. Have you ever felt like you have to talk all the time in prayer? So, um, in the church I used to go to, there was a lot of teaching on prayer, right? Different kinds of prayers. Um, and I feel, and then, there's like a time for silence, right? Stillness, decreeing and declaring. All of these ideas are the same basically as ideas that people would come up with in like when talking about manifestations. It's just like different words being used is all really. And in the realm of like manifestations or whatever, people can get caught up in thinking that they always have to talk with affirmations, right? In Christianity or Christianese, you could say getting caught up in constantly decreeing and declaring. But when either of these things comes out of a place of fear, like say something happens to you, like you're in an uncomfortable situation and you're like, oh, I don't want to feel like this, I'm gonna start decreeing and declaring something different. Well, if you're doing it, but you have to shift first. First you have to come to a place of peace, a place of neutrality where you feel good, and then start decreeing and declaring from that place, not from a place of fear and worry. And then in the manifestation or like, world, they what they call it is a rampage. See, when I was in Christianese terms, I would go on like a decreeing and declaring uh, rampage, if you will. But in this manifestation world, they call it going on a rampage, and I call it decreeing and declaring. You just start shooting out scriptures, boom, boom, boom. It's very powerful, and it's the same thing going on a rampage. What you're doing is shooting out. When you're in a high vibration, they call it. You're high energy, like you're feeling pumped. You're full of faith. Okay, and then you start just shooting out these declarations. You start shooting out these affirmations because you're feeling good, right? There's just like a lot of energy there to it too. It's very powerful, and I have seen it work. um I have seen God work. If you want to say, or they'll say, they the universe, whatever, right? So, but it's all like the same thing, just using different words, but it's very similar paradigms. Anyways, I'm reading in this book, and this guy is he's talking about that very thing. Like, okay, so the point I want to make is I used to feel like in prayer, like I always had to be saying something, right? And I would feel guilty or bad when I would go into just like closing my eyes into like a meditative mode. I would just feel like, oh, I guess I'm not doing anything, right? But that's obviously the wrong mentality. It's the wrong mentality. It's just that just comes from guilt and the flesh, like thinking, oh, I'm not doing anything in my prayer. Well, that's good. That's good though. And you don't have to do anything. You just sit in meditative silence. That's it. And it feels good. It feels amazing. You just sit in the presence. And you you just marinate in the peace of God. Some people in the other world call it, you go into the void, they call it. I don't know, that really doesn't like resonate with me, calling it the void, because when I think of void, I just think of emptiness and darkness and like, ooh. But anyways, it's just a matter of words, really. So he talks about people feeling like, if you're dealing with an issue, let's just bring it with money again. You're having an issue with money. You're in a stressful situation. Well, instead of praying really hard and using your words out of all guilt and fear and worry, surrender, right? Go into the peace. Well, we feel like, well, nothing's going to happen if I do that. Or in the law of assumption world or manifestation world, we think, but if we go into the void, we're not going to attract anything then, because we're not asking for anything. We become afraid. So he says, actually, no, that's not true. He says, both positive and negative thoughts and feelings are attractive, meaning they will result in current or future physical manifestations, or things happening. We can replace words if certain words bother us. Like if you don't want to say manifestations, you could say things happening. They create your reality. Because he made a little graph here with like negatives and positives, but a person who has not trained himself in any of these deliberate money getting techniques is very far left on the negative end of the scale, steeped in negative thoughts about money most of the time, and positive thoughts only a minuscule amount of time. A look at the scale will tell you that since he is immersed in negative money-related thoughts most of the time, the results in his life will be largely unwanted and undesired. Conventional positive thinking and affirmations is actually trying to get you into the state as represented by the next diagram. But the problem is most people can't get here. With each positive affirmation or intention they forcefully repeat, they are actually reinforcing the minus rather than plus, because you're saying it or you're praying it out of a place of fear and worry. So really you're just saying, he tells this funny Chinese fable or whatever story that this guy had a ton of money or like a ton of treasure, and he was like, what am I gonna do? Like, I don't want anybody to steal this treasure, so I'm gonna dig a hole and bury it under the ground. But then he was still worried somebody would find it, so he put a sign there that said, there is not buried treasure here, let's just say. Well, that's funny, right? That's like, well, then of course people are gonna get curious if you say there's not something there. They're gonna think something's there. So anyways, that's what he says, likens us making declarations or affirmations out of this negative place of resistance. We're by saying, I am this, out of this place, we're actually saying we have a problem with this. This is our problem. We're just like reinforcing that negative. He says, when you remove your money identity or any identity that you're considering a problem and go into the void or surrender and go surrender to the peace of God that passes all understanding, this is what actually happens. And then he makes this little diagram with a bunch of 0 in it and plus, right? So someone would think, oh my God, but 0, that means like I'm nothingness. That means I'm not going to get anything because I'm not asking for anything and nothing's going to happen. But he says you are replacing all of your negative money-related thoughts, which are the minus signs. You're replacing them with nothingness. No thoughts, no desires, no expectations, no identity. Here is where the misconception arises. Most people are worried when looking at this diagram because they think they will manifest nothing since they are asking for nothing. But that cannot be further from the truth, because the moment you free yourself from the persistent claws of negative emotions and thoughts, the universe actually steps in nicely to fill the void with this. Or you can change terms and say, God steps in, right, and fills the void or fills whatever with plus, 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 plus. So the void or zero, he says in quantum physics, they call it, oh geez, how far do I have to go? The 0 point field. So the 0 point field gives the universe all the space it needs to do its magic. Or you can change the terms again. the 0 point, going into the peace that passes all understanding, allows God to do what God does, creating those bridges of incidences for you, right? It's all about, and we reiterate the same thing over and over and over again, and it'll never change because it's the truth. And it's everlasting and eternal, that is all about entering into this place of rest. And it's the hardest thing, I think, for human beings to do, is for us to enter the place of rest, because we think nothing's going to happen. We think nothing's going to happen. But anyways, we're all learning and growing. And I don't want to live by the sweat of my brow. I don't know about anybody else. If there's a divine way to live, through this peace and through the rest of God, or through the void, whatever people want to call it, I want to live there. I want that shit. I want the spiritual and the physical. I don't want to miss out on any wonderful gifts that would make life and make my life feel peaceful and at ease and relaxed, because I think that that is a blessing.